Every coin tells a story, but not all stories are written in gold and silver. Some of the most fascinating pieces in American coinage are hidden in plain sight, resting quietly in jars, drawers, and wallets. Today, we're diving into 3 modern pennies that, believe it or not, have stirred the world of collectors, drawn attention at auctions, and proven that rarity doesn't always mean ancient. These coins aren't the classic 19th century rarities everyone talks about, nor the colonial-era treasures you read about in history books. Instead, they're far more recent issues that highlight how error, circumstance, and scarcity can instantly transform something so ordinary into something extraordinary. We'll start with one that caught collectors by surprise not too long ago, the 2014 USA 1 penny. At first glance, the 2014 penny doesn't look like anything special. It features the familiar Union Shield design on the reverse, which had been introduced just 4 years earlier in 2010, and Abraham Lincoln's bust on the obverse, as it has been since 1909. Billions were struck that year, literally billions. The U.S. Mint produced over 5 billion pennies in 2014 between Philadelphia and Denver, and that kind of mintage hardly screams rarity. But within that mountain of copper-plated zinc coins lies the intrigue, a series of minting errors and unusual variations that have made specific 2014 pennies stand out in a way no one anticipated. One of the most talked about varieties from 2014 is the double die obverse, often spotted in coins struck at the Philadelphia Mint. A double die happens when the coin's die itself, the tool used to strike blank planchets, receives a misaligned or multiple impression during preparation. When that die then goes into service, every coin it strikes carries the same doubling effect. On the 2014 penny, this doubling is often noticeable in the inscriptions, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty," where the letters appear thicker, shadowed, or almost vibrating with a second outline. Collectors love these kinds of varieties because they're not random damage or post-mint flaws. They're part of the official production process, which makes them legitimate and collectible. Another variety tied to 2014 is the floating roof error, a quirk that actually harkens back to the Lincoln Memorial reverse design used before the Union Shield. Many collectors mistakenly apply the term to modern shield pennies, but with careful examination, specialists discovered a minor die abrasion in some 2014 strikes that gives the shield's horizontal bars an unusual, broken appearance. While not as dramatic as a double die, errors like this create their own following because they're visually distinct, and people enjoy the treasure hunt aspect of looking for them in pocket change. Of course, condition plays a critical role in the value of these coins. A circulated 2014 penny, even with doubling, might only bring a few dollars, but in mint state, particularly grades above MS-65, values can climb significantly. A pristine 2014 double die obverse penny certified by a top grading service has been known to sell for hundreds of dollars. When you consider that the coin itself has a face value of just 1 cent, that's an incredible leap. Auction houses like Heritage and Stack's Bowers have recorded strong demand for these, often seeing spirited bidding among collectors who focus on modern varieties. In fact, some of the best preserved 2014 era pennies have crossed the auction block in the $300 to $500 range, a remarkable figure for a coin barely a decade old. There's also something fascinating about the timing of this penny. By 2014, the conversation about discontinuing the U.S. cent was already buzzing. Many economists, and even members of Congress, had suggested eliminating the penny altogether because it costs more to make than it's worth. Each cent struck that year cost about 1.7 cents in production, an irony that's not lost on collectors. That broader cultural backdrop has added an extra layer of intrigue to modern pennies. When people speculate that the penny might not survive much longer, every era coin from these years feels like a piece of history in the making. What makes the 2014 penny especially collectible isn't just the errors, it's the fact that collectors are increasingly paying attention to modern issues. For decades, serious numismatists focused on older, scarcer material, leaving newer coins largely ignored. But as registry sets and competitive collecting grew in popularity, people started scrutinizing every year, every mint mark, every variety. The 2014 penny landed right in the middle of this shift. Suddenly, even the smallest doubling or die crack wasn't dismissed as a curiosity. It became a legitimate addition to a set, something worth grading, cataloging, and competing over. It's also worth pointing out that many of the most valuable 2014 pennies owe their price tag not just to rarity, but to the obsessive demand for high-grade examples. The difference between an MS-64 and an MS-67 penny might not look dramatic to the casual eye, but to registry collectors, that single grade point can mean hundreds of dollars. Some of the highest graded 2014 pennies, particularly in Denver Mint issues, have brought jaw-dropping prices simply because they're the best of the best. This dynamic explains why common coins in extraordinary condition can rival the prices of much older, seemingly more exotic pieces. Now, while most collectors won't stumble across a $500 double-die penny in their spare change, the 2014 issues still encourage people to look more closely at everyday coins. That's part of their charm. They blur the line between ordinary and extraordinary. Stories circulate online of people finding these varieties in bank rolls or even in the change from a grocery store. For someone who's not deeply immersed in the hobby, that discovery can be a spark, the beginning of a serious collecting journey. For veteran collectors, it's proof that modern coinage still has surprises to offer. So when you look at the 2014 USA 1 penny, don't just see a tiny, everyday coin. See the billions of routine strikes, the handful of remarkable errors, the collectors who chase them, the auction houses that spotlight them, and the greater cultural moment they represent. It's a reminder that rarity isn't always about age, it's about circumstance. And in the world of coins, circumstance can turn 1 cent into something worth hundreds of dollars. By the time we reached 2017, the Union Shield penny had already become familiar. The design, meant to symbolize Lincoln's role in preserving the Union, had been around for 7 years. Most collectors were used to seeing it by then, and at first, there wasn't much excitement surrounding another year of mass-produced cents. But as is so often the case in coin collecting, what seemed ordinary on the surface soon revealed hidden gems. The 2017 penny became one of the most talked about modern small coins, thanks to a combination of unusual production quirks, sharp-eyed collectors, and the growing popularity of error hunting in everyday change. The first point of interest lies in the fact that 2017 pennies came in 2 primary versions, those from Philadelphia and those from Denver. And for the first time since 1793, the Philadelphia Mint marked its pennies with a P mint mark. For over 2 centuries, Philadelphia coins never bore that letter, since it was the original mint and didn't need a distinguishing mark. But in 2017, to celebrate the 225th anniversary of the U.S. Mint, the decision was made to add a P to cents struck in Philadelphia just for that year. This was a historic change, subtle as it might seem. Collectors immediately recognized the significance, since it marked the first and only time a P would appear on Lincoln cents. That single decision instantly elevated 2017 P pennies into a special category, separating them from the billions of other Shield cents minted before and after. Beyond the mint-mark novelty, 2017 pennies also became famous for one particular era variety, the double die obverse, especially noticeable on the Liberty inscription and the date. Some examples show a clear shadowing effect that makes the lettering appear doubled, a classic variety type that collectors have sought out for decades. Error specialists quickly flagged these coins, and before long, rolls of 2017 P pennies were being combed through by collectors eager to find them. The combination of a first-time mint mark and an identifiable double die gave this issue a double dose of collectability. Auction results reflect just how strong the demand became. Circulated examples of the double die error might sell for $20 to $30, which is already impressive for a coin worth just 1 cent face value. But high-grade uncirculated pieces, especially those certified at MS-65 or higher, have commanded far more. Some have crossed auction blocks for over $500, with record-setting pieces drawing even higher bids. While not every 2017 penny carries such a premium, the fact that enough exists to spark this kind of competitive bidding has solidified the year's reputation among Lincoln cent enthusiasts. Even without errors, the 2017 P penny in pristine condition has collector interest simply because of its unique place in history. Registry set collectors in particular want a flawless example, and top-graded coins can bring in surprising premiums. For example, MS68 Red Certified 2017 P pennies, coins with essentially no visible imperfections and blazing original luster, have sold for hundreds of dollars. For a coin only a few years old, that's an incredible jump in value. And because the mint mark distinction exists for only 1 year, collectors see it as a required piece in any serious Lincoln cent collection. The Denver Mint issues of 2017 also saw their fair share of error varieties. Some coins were struck slightly off-center, creating dramatic misaligned images where parts of the design are missing or cut off. These errors, while not unique to 2017, always excite collectors because they're so visually obvious. Imagine pulling a penny from your pocket and seeing Lincoln's portrait shifted halfway to the rim. That kind of mistake is instantly recognizable and desirable. The more dramatic the misalignment, the higher the value, with some 2017 off-center pennies selling for $100 or more depending on condition and percentage of the strike missing. Another layer of intrigue around 2017 cents comes from timing. The U.S. Mint was facing increasing scrutiny for the rising cost of producing pennies. By 2017, each 1-cent coin cost about 1.8 cents to manufacture, even higher than in 2014. The government was essentially losing money on every penny made, and debates about whether to retire the denomination were heating up. For collectors, that gave 2017 pennies a symbolic weight. If the cent were ever discontinued, this unique P mint mark year would stand out as a historical bookend, a coin produced during a moment when the future of the denomination was in serious question. One of the most fascinating aspects of the 2017 penny story is how it bridged the gap between casual collectors and seasoned numismatists. The P mint mark made national headlines, sparking interest among people who didn't normally pay attention to coins. News outlets covered it, and suddenly, everyday Americans were looking more closely at their change. That wave of curiosity brought new people into the hobby, many of whom then discovered the era varieties and auction stories. For longtime collectors, it was refreshing to see the penny, often dismissed as insignificant, capturing mainstream attention again. Condition-based value differences for 2017 pennies are dramatic. A circulated 2017 P penny with no errors is essentially worth face value. But start moving up the grading scale, and things change quickly. Mint State 65 examples might sell for $10 to $20, while Mint State 67s can push closer to $100. Once you get into Mint State 68 territory, the value multiplies, especially if the coin is certified with a strong red designation, meaning the original bright copper color is fully intact without spotting or toning. Add a double die error on top of that grade, and suddenly you're in the territory of several $100s or more. It's a perfect example of how a coin's story, condition, and era status combine to determine value. For collectors in their 40s and 50s, this coin holds an added charm. Many started their numismatic journeys with Lincoln cents decades ago, searching rolls for wheat pennies or filling blue Whitman folders as kids. The 2017 P feels like a continuation of that story, a new chapter that connects the old excitement of penny hunting with today's market-driven, registry-focused collecting world. It's a reminder that even after more than a century of Lincoln cents, the series is still capable of surprises. So when you hold a 2017 penny, especially one with that historic P mint mark, you're not just holding a piece of loose change. You're holding a marker of numismatic firsts, a potential era treasure, and a snapshot of a moment when America debated the penny's very survival. And as the auction records show, some of these little copper-coated coins have proven their worth far more than 1 cent. By the early 2000s, Lincoln cents were already one of the longest-running series in American numismatics. The Lincoln Memorial Reverse Design, introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, was still going strong in 2002. On the surface, pennies from that year looked like any other, zinc cores with a thin copper plating, struck in the billions at Philadelphia and Denver. But as seasoned collectors know, even in a high mintage year, unusual errors, die varieties, and condition rarities can transform common sense into coins worth saving, studying, and in some cases, paying significant money for. The 2002 penny is a perfect example of how overlooked modern issues sometimes contain surprises hiding in plain sight. The first thing to understand about 2002 cents is sheer volume. The U.S. Mint struck more than 7 billion pennies that year across its two major facilities, so on paper, there's nothing scarce about them. That massive production is exactly why most circulated examples today are only worth face value. But when you start looking closely at the details, you discover pockets of rarity, varieties, and errors that turn what seems like an everyday coin into something collectors will eagerly chase. Among the most notable 2002 varieties is the double die reverse. Careful examination of some Denver minted examples reveals doubling in the lettering of United States of America and 1 cent, as well as in the Lincoln Memorial itself. On strong varieties, the columns of the memorial appear shadowed, giving them a distinct doubled appearance. This isn't the kind of doubling caused by machine strike issues after the fact. It originates from the die itself, which makes it a true variety and therefore collectible. Depending on the clarity and strength of the doubling, these coins can bring $50, $100, or more in uncirculated condition. Another variety tied to 2002 is the wide AM reverse, also called the wide AM variety. This one's interesting because it traces back to the design hubs used to prepare dies. In the normal 2002 cent, the letters A and M in America on the reverse are almost touching. But in certain era varieties, the spacing is noticeably wider, creating the wide AM appearance. While earlier wide AM cents from the late 1990s are more famous, examples have been documented in 2002 as well, and they generate significant interest. Collectors who specialize in Lincoln cent varieties often hunt rolls of 2002 pennies specifically to find these. High-grade wide AM examples can sell for hundreds of dollars, sometimes more if they're certified at MS 67 or above. And then there are the striking errors. The 2002 pennies are known for off-center strikes, die cracks, and even the occasional broad strike, where the collar failed and allowed the coin metal to spread outward during striking. These types of dramatic mint errors are not limited to 2002, of course, but because billions were struck that year, enough mistakes slipped through to keep things interesting. An off-center 2002 penny showing half of Lincoln's portrait missing, for instance, can easily fetch $100 or more depending on how dramatic the error is and how well centered the remaining design appears. Auction records tell the story of how even modern pennies like these can command surprising prices. Heritage auctions, great collections, and other venues have offered pristine examples of 2002 varieties and errors that sold far above expectations. One well-preserved double die example brought in nearly $400, a figure unthinkable for most modern cents. Meanwhile, registry collectors, those competing for the highest graded examples of every date and mint, have driven prices for top-condition 2002 pennies into the stratosphere. An MS 68 red certified by PCGS or NGC, for instance, has been known to cross the $1,000 mark, despite the coin itself being just a couple of decades old. That's the power of condition rarity. Even a coin with billions of siblings can become scarce if it's the best of the best. Beyond errors and high grades, the 2002 penny holds an interesting place in the timeline of Lincoln cents. It's part of the final stretch of the memorial design, which would end in 2008. Collectors looking back now see 2002 as one of the quiet years, leading up to the design transition, when the series shifted first to 4 commemorative bicentennial reverses in 2009 and then to the Union Shield starting in 2010. That hindsight adds an element of nostalgia to the 2002 penny. It belongs to the last chapter of a design that lasted almost 50 years. Condition, as always, makes a huge difference in value. A circulated 2002 cent without errors is worth a penny, plain and simple. But once you find an uncirculated example, particularly in full red condition without spotting or toning, the value increases. At MS 65 red, you might expect $10 to $20. At MS67 red, the figure could jump to several $100s, especially for a strong variety like the wide AM or double die. And at MS68 red, the coin becomes a true condition rarity, with only a handful certified at that level, making it extremely desirable for collectors chasing perfection. What makes the 2002 penny so fascinating is how it represents the bigger lesson of modern numismatics. Rarity isn't always about age, but about circumstance. Even a coin from just 2 decades ago can become valuable if the right combination of era, variety, and condition comes together. And for many collectors, especially those in their 40s and 50s who grew up filling Lincoln cent folders as kids, the 2002 penny connects the familiar hobby of roll hunting with the high-stakes world of modern coin grading and auctions. It's a bridge between the casual collecting of pocket change and the serious pursuit of registry-quality examples. Bringing everything together, these 3 modern pennies, the 2014, the 2017, and the 2002, remind us that value and rarity aren't always found in centuries-old coins locked away in museums. Sometimes, they're sitting right in your pocket, waiting to be recognized. Each of these coins, in its own way, has proven that a 1-cent piece can be worth far more than its face value, whether because of a historic mint mark, a double die, a wide AM variety, or simply surviving in near-perfect condition. For collectors, especially those with years of experience, they're a reminder to never overlook the smallest details. Because in numismatics, the ordinary can become extraordinary, and the next great find might just be hiding in the change you receive today.